Hi friends, Mrs. Wread back to share another read aloud story with you. Today we're starting a new chapter book, Charlotte's Web. This is another classic, much like Treasure Island. It's written by E.B. White, and it's a story about Wilbur, who's a pig, who is raised lovingly by a girl named Fern. He's a barn pig. Notice the barn. And he's bored and he's lonely, and he meets someone named Charlotte. It's actually not a someone, it's something else. And Charlotte and Wilbur become great friends. So, as usual, find your comfy place, sit back, and get ready to be a listener. Charlotte's Web, Chapter 1. Before breakfast. Where's Papa going with the axe? Fern said to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Oh, out to the hog house, replied Mrs. Arabelle. Some pigs were born last night. I don't see why he needs an axe, said Fern, who was only 8 years old. So, like a lot of you guys, second grade. Well, said her mother, one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it'll never amount to anything. So your father decided to just do away with it. Do away with it? Shrieked Fern. Do you mean kill it? Just because it's smaller than the others? Miss Arabelle put a pitcher of cream on the table. Don't yell, Fern. Your father's right. The pig would probably die anyway. Fern pushed the chairs out of the way and she ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping wet by the time she caught up with her father. Please don't kill it, she sobbed. It's unfair. Mr. Arabelle stopped walking. Fern, he said gently, you'll have to learn how to control yourself. Control myself, yelled Fern. This is a matter of life and death. You talk about controlling myself? Tears were running down her cheeks as she grabbed hold of his axe and she tried to pull it out of his hands. This is Fern trying to take that axe away. I have to say, I kind of agree with Fern on this one. Fern, said Mr. Arabelle, I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling, meaning a little runt pig, makes trouble. Now go run along. But it's unfair, cried Fern. The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I'd been born very small at birth, would you have killed me? Mr. Arabelle said, certainly not, looking down at his daughter with love. But this is different. A little girl is one thing. A little runty pig is another. I think I disagree. I see no difference, said Fern, still hanging onto the axe. This is the most terrible case of injustice I've ever heard of. A queer look came over John Arabelle's face. That means an odd look. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. All right, he said. You go back to the house, and I will bring the runt when I come in. I'll let you start it on a bottle like a baby. And then you'll see what trouble it can be. How much trouble could a little pig be? When Mr. Arabelle returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs carrying her sneakers. The kitchen was set for breakfast, and the room smelled of coffee, bacon, awkward, and damp plaster and wood smoke from the stove. Put it on the chair, said Mrs. Arabelle. Mr. Arabelle sent the carton down at Fern's eating place, and then he walked to the sink and he washed his hands and he dried them on the paper towel. Fern slowly came down the stairs. Her eyes were still red from crying. As she approached her chair, the carton wobbled. There was a scratching noise in there. She looked at her father, and then she lifted the lid from the carton. It was a pig! A newborn barn pig, the runt. It was a white one. The morning light shone through its tiny little pink ears. He's all yours, said Mr. Arabelle, saved from an untimely death. And may the good Lord save me for this foolishness. So he still doesn't think he's doing the right thing, but I think that I would believe he did. Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. Oh, she whispered, look at him. He's absolutely perfect. She closed the carton carefully. First, she kissed her father, then she kissed her mother, and then she opened the lid again, and she lifted the pig out, and she held it up to her cheek. At this moment, her brother Avery came in the room. Avery was 10. What's that? He demanded. What's Fern got? She's got a guest for breakfast, said Mrs. Arabelle. Wash your hands and your face, Avery. You call that miserable thing a pig? That's a fine specimen of a pig. It's no bigger than a white rat. Rat, not cat. Wash up and eat your breakfast, Avery, said his mother. The school bus will be here in a half an hour. Can I have a pig too, Pop? Asked Avery. No, I only distribute pigs to early risers. That means she got up early and Avery didn't. Mr. Arabelle said, when Fern was up at daylight trying to rid the world of injustice, meaning save that pig, and as a result, she now has a pig. A small one, to be sure, but nevertheless, it's a pig. It just shows up what can happen if a person gets out of bed promptly. So, let's eat. But Fern couldn't eat until her pig had a drink of milk. Mrs. Arabelle found a baby's nursing bottle, and she poured some milk in the bottle. And then she handed it to Fern, and Fern gave him breakfast. A minute later, Fern was seated on the floor of the kitchen with that infant pig between her legs, teaching it to drink from the bottle. The pig, although tiny, had a really good appetite, meaning he was hungry, and he caught on really quick how to drink from that bottle. The school bus honked from the road. Run, commanded Mrs. Arabelle, taking the pig from Fern and slipping a donut into her hand. So she didn't wash her hands after she had the pig in her arms. Avery grabbed his other stuff and a donut, and off the children ran out to the road and climbed onto the bus. Fern took no notice of the others on the bus. She just stared out the window, thinking what a blissful world it was and how lucky she was to have an entire charge of a pig. She's now a mommy. Fern had named her pet by the time her school bus reached school, selecting the most beautiful name she could think of. Its name is Wilbur. That's my grandpa's name. She whispered to herself. She was still thinking about the pig when the teacher said, Fern, what's the capital of Pennsylvania? Wilbur, Fern said dreamily. The pupils giggled and they looked at Fern, confused. Wilbur? But we can tell what's on Fern's mind, can't we? Thanks for tuning in and being a listener, and get ready for Chapter 2. Bye, guys.